Hello, and thank you all for joining the iGraphics webinar introducing PIA, revolutionizing process intelligence with generative AI. We're so glad that you could join all of us today, and promises to be a great session. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone is muted, but please feel free to submit any questions that you may have in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And we'll address those at the end of the session. This session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive the recording following the webinar. So let's take a look at today's agenda. After a brief introduction, we'll discuss the main drivers pushing organizations towards transformation. Next, we'll look at the common challenges organizations face when trying to improve processes and why these barriers exist. And then introducing PIA and explain how it can streamline and enhance your processes. We'll do a deep dive into the live demonstration to show you how PIA and our platform work in real time. We'll cover the key capabilities and how they align with your transformational goals. And then we'll discuss and share with you how you can get started with PIA. And then finally, we'll open up the floor to answer any questions that you may have. So please join me in welcoming Ira McKee, our Director of Product Management. Ira.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today. As Don mentioned, my name is Ira McKee. I'm the Director of Product Management at iGraphics, and I'm very excited to share with you today PIA's capabilities in a live demonstration. But before we dive into that, I think it's very important to discuss why PIA, why this technology, and how it'll be useful in addressing business problems that you encounter every day. Talked about transformation drivers. What are they? What have we heard from customers, the market? It's really around process and efficiency, process visibility, data-driven decision-making, risk management, continuous improvement, and what we've been hearing more and more, do more with less. So let's talk about the benefits of iGraphics, PIA, and technological solutions to these problems. We look to improve productivity, streamline processes, identify bottlenecks, optimize workflows to get more done. Reduce cost, keep volume, pace, quality stable while decreasing financial investments through process optimization and resource allocation. And as always, ensure compliance, regulatory compliance, internal compliance, maintain operational resilience by complying with external regulations and internal policy. Prevent substantial financial risk and reputational risk. The iGraphics approach, Process 360 Live, really starts with discovering your processes. How does your business run today? Gaining objective visibility into how your processes run, uncover inefficiencies, bottlenecks, opportunities for improvement, and uncovering failure points and implemented controls. What's interesting here is discovering process, we really see it in two ways. You have structured, unstructured documentation. You have subject matter experts in your organization. You have systems. All of these contribute to discovering your process. And then it's about designing. How does your business process, how should they run? Build an ideal risk-informed future state, quantify future process performance based on proposed changes, and ensure processes are compliant with regulations and internal policies. And then optimize your business. Execute continuous improvement based on identified opportunities. Safeguard against future inefficiencies and risks through real-time monitoring. So what are the barriers? What have we heard from customers, the market, and what have we experienced? It's time-consuming. It's error-prone. often requires technical expertise, BPMN, APQC, other frameworks. There's a lack of ownership, and it's difficult to scale. So how can AI help you overcome these challenges? And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of presentation mode. I want to get into document mode. So what you're looking at on the screen here is just a Word document. This Word document has a couple of different steps. It's very simplistic, but I wanted to show you, it's a great way to showcase how document ingestion works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a diagram. I'm going to use the PIA assistant to create that diagram. I'll give it a name. Then when I hit finish, you'll notice I'm brought to PIA, our process intelligence system. And from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach the document. This is the document that we just took a look at with the associated steps. I'm going to give PIA a prompt, create a process from the file. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. As you can see, PIA is out working to traverse the document, understand the content of the document, identify process activities, steps. And so what we'll see here is that we've actually got a fairly comprehensive 11-page process that outlines basically how to create and open tickets in iGraphics. You can see here, this looks a lot like many process documents across customer organizations. Maybe it's in Word, maybe it's in PDF. And you can see here, I'm not going to show everything, but it's fairly well documented. So you can see on the screen here, what kind of diagram would you like to create today? Create a process from the file. The process extracted from the document involves managing incidents using the iGraphics and ecosystems. Here's how the process is structured. It will actually traverse the document, pull out any steps required to create the process, and then actually draw the diagram. And you can see here, it's identified the various lanes of who's responsible. It's actually created notes as highlights within the document itself related to the activities. And here you have in 15, 30 seconds, we create essentially a diagram that documents the process that was in the Word document. Do a little window move here. So the exciting thing about this is that it now takes your structured and unstructured documentation. We find that in many customer organizations, getting businesses, business units, business organizations to contribute to the process landscape can be daunting and can be challenging. Maybe you have a process owner or a business line manager. They have day-to-day activities that have nothing to do with documenting process, but you need them to contribute to the overall process landscape. This is a very easy way for anybody in your organization to be able to contribute to the process landscape, document what's being done today. Now, we do appreciate PIA. Our goal here is really around 95% accuracy in traversing documents and documenting processes and creating the diagrams. We think, getting everything 100% one-to-one, that's obviously a goal. However, reasonable accuracy in creating and documenting these processes is significant time savings and advantage. It can take anywhere from, depending on level of technical competency and expertise, anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to draw a diagram. So if you can imagine, you might have subject matter experts in your organization. You might have a center of excellence professionals in your organization. And they're going to take the document and then they're going to, in most cases, draw a diagram related to it. Our goal here is to really lower the amount of time it takes to effectively document your processes. Step back over here for a moment. That's not all PIA is capable of. It's not just about document ingestion. It's also about interactive chat and being able to actually create diagrams from chat. So here, we're going to go ahead and create a diagram with PIA. So here I'm going to tell PIA, just create an order to cash process. And then I'm going to hit enter. And as PIA is thinking about what it needs to do to actually create the order to cash process, given that it does not have a document to inform PIA, it's doing a lot of work to highlight the commonalities across order to cash processes. So it can propose that as a diagram. And here you can see we've asked PIA, create an order to cash process. And it specifically outlines everything required to do so. You can see here, it's created associated notes related to the activities themselves. So now we have a starting point. We have a starting point for an order to cash process. But maybe I want to change the language. You can update the language associated with the diagram, all the associated notes and activities. We're also looking to leverage PIA as a starting point for translating and localizing user-created content. And here you can see PIA has localized all of the text into German. But I want to undo that. I just hit the back button and it's back to English. Let's say, for example, that we wanted to add an activity in between order confirmation and inventory check. We've got a credit check that happens here. And we have approve or reject based on that credit assessment. What I want to do here now, I think I want to notify the applicant upon rejection. Oh, let's just say customer. Here we're going to give PIA's prompt, and then PIA should add an activity to notify the customer on a credit rejection. So as you can see, extraordinarily powerful. Now, one thing that I would highlight, we're in a preview mode here. What does that basically mean? We're giving you a canvas in which to document your process, but this actually isn't included in the repository at this point. It's not an actual diagram. It's a canvas for a diagram. And here in a moment, when PIA updates our step, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and complete this, and we'll show you kind of the next step. We're going to change that back to English. Pia took the latest command there and applied it to the second. So yeah, we're in early access and still doing a little bit of tuning here. Here we're back, and we also have a step to notify the customer in case of a rejection of credit. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And you'll see here when I hit done, now I have a diagram. As we mentioned before, there's probably a little bit of rework that would have to happen, but this is a much better starting point for creating and documenting your process. Actually getting a diagram created as part of your business architecture. And from here, you would simply check out this diagram and go and make any edits, make any changes that you want before you would send that away for approval, or connect it to the business architecture, actually connect it to the resources, connect it to the described objects. So when we're thinking about PIA, we're thinking about use cases. What are we trying to accomplish here? We're really trying to democratize the ability to have people in your organization contribute to the process landscape, really lowering the technical barrier of entry in order to actually contribute. I know in speaking directly with customers for many years now, the getting other folks in the organization to contribute can be challenging. High level of technical expertise necessary to actually diagram. Maybe you're using particular frameworks, APQC, and your business folks don't understand that framework. The ability to have other folks in your organization contribute to the process landscape is an enormous time savings. And whether you have SOPs documented in your organization, structured, unstructured data, the ability to actually bring that data in a meaningful way is a significant time savings. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation here. So really, DTOs enable successful digital transformation. How PIA can help. Create process diagrams to quickly build a dynamic, real-time digital replica of your operational systems. Leverage accurate and complete process data to build a DTO. Continuously sync real-world process with digital counterparts and easily identify inefficiencies and forecast future outcomes. So PIA, scaling process improvement. What's available now? Creating diagrams from conversations. Using natural language, users can create diagrams, adjust swim lanes, add and remove, update process steps, translate into foreign languages, change formatting, and more. You can ingest documents, SOPs, automatically create diagrams from even the most complex uploaded documents, then use natural language prompts to refine them. So I want to talk about what's next. And what's next isn't everything coming. What's next is just what's next on deck. We realize that connecting and creating that business architecture, creating enterprise objects, creating resources in those relationships is a significant time investment. So what we're working on now is allowing PIA not only to draw the diagram, but let's say that you have an existing business architecture that you've created in the enterprise object. Maybe you have resources. PIA has the capability to actually identify what those resources are, what those described objects are, and either create the relationship to those upon the initial diagram creation, or if those objects don't exist, the resources don't exist, the processes don't exist, propose the creation of those. So if you can imagine, I have a process owner in my organization. I need them to contribute to the process landscape because they are the subject matter expert. Maybe they have a document that describes what is done. Maybe they just know and they have it in their head. So they actually create the initial diagram with PIA, and then it would automatically create the relationships to the business architecture necessary. Now, we don't think, again, that that is going to be 100% accurate, but you can then take something that is 85% complete. Maybe that goes to a process designer. Maybe that goes to a process architect. They review that, make a few changes, send it out for approval or review. We've already estimated and measured at this point that it can save, upwards of 75% of the time in really getting the initial diagram and the business architecture connected. Next, we're looking at PIA for creating reports and dashboards, and not just how you create reports and dashboards in iGraphics today, but imagine if you, for example, are leveraging IQL for reporting. You have to understand IQL to actually get the data that you're looking for. PIA has an amazing capability to translate all of that. So you don't need to know particular technical languages, query languages, or other advanced technical concepts in order to get data out of iGraphics. Because what PIA can do is it can actually take natural language and it can translate that to whatever is actually necessary to get the data out. Simplify integration, generate API calls based on natural language. Most of the folks that I deal with on a day-to-day basis are not super technical. They're not developing APIs. They're not developing integrations. That's typically technical folks in your organization, engineers. What this does is this really simplifies the process of creating these integrations because you can use natural language to do so with PIA as the translator. But that's not all that's coming. That's just what's next. Generative AI technology in general, you think about it as two different tracks. Generative AI technology is improving on its own. It's maturing and growing in feature set and capability. And then iGraphics, as this technical capability is being extended, we're always evaluating ways that we can leverage that technology to improve the lives of our customers, create efficiencies. An example of that, after this top 3 list, we have image ingestion. So imagine for a moment that you're in a working session at the office. You have a department and the subject matter experts. You've got a bunch of Post-it notes and you're identifying and discovering the process. You're talking about what's being done. You're overlaying these Post-it notes on a board. At the end of that, you simply take a picture. You upload the image into PIA, and then it can do the same thing that it does with documents, with natural language translation. It can actually, at that point, from the image itself, create the diagram and the associated business architecture. So this is technology that exists today within generative AI. It's just a matter of implementing it correctly. In addition to images, you can think of different frameworks. Let's take APQC. Maybe you're leveraging that framework, but nobody in your organization from the process owner, business owner side understands that framework, but they still need to be able to contribute. We are looking at ways that you can ingest a document, an image, a picture, and then at that point, actually convert that into the appropriate framework. So lots of exciting use cases for generative AI technology and solving real problems that you have today. So getting started with PIA. The natural language inputs are available today in Process 360 Live. This is available as an early access feature flag. Just to state, early access doesn't mean no value. Early access simply means that we have additional work that we want to do to bring that to market. The SAP document upload, contact your account manager for details related to that. Prospective customers will follow up with you after the webinar and send an email, or you can send an email to info@igraphics.com. And with that, I would like to open it up for Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Ira. We have several questions actually. Um, Pertaining to format and how complicated of a document that can be ingested. So you already mentioned PDF format could be ingested. What other formats can be ingested and how complicated can those documents be?
So PIA today can ingest Word documents and PDFs. We are exploring other file formats. Generative AI technology itself has about 30 different file formats that it supports. Um, One of the interesting things about kind of that piece is many of those document types are not usual business document types. I think next, images are probably going to be the next thing that we add from a file format perspective.
Great.
And speaking to complexity, we're always testing. We've actually had success at 160-page process documents. Now there is, when you get that big, there is some technical complexity that you have to lay out. Because in most cases, if you have a document of that size that describes a process, so much of that information would be relevant to the business architecture and that connection, which is not supported yet, but is in development. Really, it's going through and it's reading the document in picking out the various pieces that are related to the process architecture. So PIA knows, hey, this is an activity. PIA knows that this is a particular relationship to that activity, for example. So to answer your question, we don't know exactly. We have tested it over 150 pages, and it works fairly seamlessly.
Great. And this question is in regard to availability and the new release coming from 15.11.24.
Yeah, that's a pretty old release. Just to set the stage, PIA is available in our cloud product. We have not extended PIA to our data center product at this time. That is something that we're looking at as part of enhancements to our self-hosted capability later this year. So for PIA, you would need to update to 19.6. So PIA is a fairly recent release, and you would need to be on a new cloud version to take advantage of it.
Here's an interesting one. Can PIA ingest text transcripts from Teams or Zoom video, audio, and generate those documents and process models?
So PIA cannot yet. However, when we talk about file formats, audio and video are file formats. And so generative AI technology today has some speech recognition capabilities. And it will, in the future, be able to take these type of file formats, be it Zoom calls, team calls, a mix of video, a mix of audio, to actually create the process discussed in the conversation as well. So I think of it as just data in different types of data. And generative AI technology itself already supports that. It's a matter of implementing that technology in PIA. I would think that that's something that we're looking at probably later in 2025, simply based on our roadmap priority. We really think that getting the capability to connect, create the business architecture and the associated objects to processes and resources is probably the biggest time savings. But the great thing about this is that this exists within generative AI technology today. So it's about us taking advantage of it and including it in the product in a way that solves problems for our customers.
This question is in regards to the translation feature.
Mm-hmm.
Is that only for auto-generated maps currently?
Yes, that is only for the diagrams in which PIA creates, is part of kind of that document or prompt ingestion. However, we are looking at translating user content as kind of a side project, leveraging PIA-like technology but it probably wouldn't be extended via the chat interface as much, right? So when we think about localizing user content, you need to take a diagram, for example, and right now we have the capability. You can actually go in and you can localize a diagram across the languages that we support. But that is a very manual effort. That is actually going in and doing a manual translation. So we will be looking to leverage generative AI technology and PIA to automate that process, meaning select a language, it automatically does all of the translation of the activities, associated notes, etc.
Great. Here's one about the order to cash process.
Mhm.
Can PIA build a different order to cash process based on an industry specifics? For instance, can I ask it to build an order to cash process for agribusiness versus medical devices?
Yes, absolutely you can. I would say the fidelity there, again, is probably in the 75-80% range, right? Which is PIA certainly can determine the nuance of the order to cash process based on the prompt itself. I told it to create a simple order to cash process. And so it went out and basically provided me what it would calculate is the most standard order to cash process. The more information that you give in the prompt, the more nuanced PIA can be in its outputs.
Here's a question on generic process diagrams from industry frameworks such as SCOR or APQC or something else. Can you um, give a prompt for create an order to cash diagram with any other text or document reference?
Yes, absolutely. I was using fairly straightforward generic prompts. Can you create a scenario process diagram from industry frameworks? I would say not yet, right? So we do have the capability to do that. Generative AI does, but that is more of a future state that we're looking to support. And we kind of covered that a little bit earlier in the call, where you have a process owner. They need to contribute to the process landscape, but they don't understand APQC framework. When they ingest that document, aligning that to that framework is technically possible with generative AI. We just simply haven't gone there yet as far as developing that capability.
Let's assume we provide PIA with two documents with two different processes described with commonalities. To what extent will PIA be able to identify sub-processes within those documents and identify whether there is a sub-process of those processes from those documents?
Yes, we get into level and depth. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So if you have a document that describes a process and it describes a process, sub process, and even another level underneath that, PIA can absolutely create that diagram and associated business architecture. What PIA won't do today, there's something that is in the development pipeline, is PIA is going to create the diagram. It's not going to create a sub-process diagram related on that yet, right? So we look at this in similar terms to bulk diagram, upload. So right now you'll notice you can add a PDF or a Word document and have a diagram created from that. We do have intention on what we consider bulk upload, which is maybe you have 100 SOPs, right? And rather than do them one by one and bringing them into iGraphics, being able to do all 100 at once. Now, from there, it gets very interesting because of those 100, you might have a subset that are sub-processes to other diagrams or processes that relay in that documentation. Generative AI in PIA specifically does have the capability to extend that. But you have to think about it. There's generative AI capability, and then there's how that applies to actually getting work done in iGraphics. And so in order for us to to support that, there's, kind of an order to our roadmap priority. You really need the ability to create objects, because that object might be the sub-process, that object might be another diagram related. So if you think about it, the order of operation really is we need to be able to connect or propose the business architecture related. When we do that, now we have the technology and the capability in iGraphics to actually combine and create kind of this hierarchy of sub-processes. So the answer is it's coming, not yet.
Follow-up to that is, does PIA understand the concept of milestone within a process diagram?
It does.
And what about documenting the process activity attributes?
Yes, that comes with actually, there's a few ways to look at it. You have an activity. It has sub-information. We can capture that sub-information in the activity. But maybe, that activity describes a process, right? It describes another object that might exist in your repository. Currently today, PIA is not making that relationship to that object. That is one of the next items on the roadmap for development is actually creating that connection.
What about graphic formats that can be ingested?
Not yet. So when we think about the graphic formats, that's image ingestion. Generative AI has that capability today. We have not, obviously released that in PIA yet, but that is a file format that we look to support. That gets into the earlier scenario that we were describing, where you're in a conference room with your subject matter experts. You're actually creating, you've got Post-it notes, or maybe you have, a Visio diagram that you export to image and you just want to bring it in, or some other, diagramming tool. Whenever you can have an image export, you would be able to import that. It's not yet. Right now, it's just documents and PDFs, but we are expanding on that file format, with image, I think, being next.
Great. And what about exporting? What formats?
It's the standard formats that we support today: BPMN, XML, other image formats. So our export capability doesn't change.
Can Generate API be used to post updates to objects?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of it, is really creating API calls on the fly, right? Being able to, I want to make sure I understood that question. That was around APIs, right, Don?
It said, can Generate API be used to post updates to objects?
Yes. So we're thinking about this in the integration concept. So PIA has the capability to actually generate an API call on the fly. This is what we're going to be leveraging internally for the reporting piece, which is, I am going to tell PIA what I want. It is going to generate the API call necessary to retrieve the information that I'm looking for, or update the information that I'm looking for. So yes.
Is this functionality permission driven?
This functionality is permission driven. Yes.
Will PIA be able to create process and activity objects and accept them, as well as add metadata to those objects, like supported by, controlled by, responsible?
Yeah, PIA will be able to do that. That is part of, we talked about on the roadmap, the very next item, creating those enterprise objects in that architecture, along with creating a process object, a resource object, or actually finding that in your repository and creating that relationship. That is on the roadmap. Yes. I do see one interesting here, Don, that I'd like to address.
Okay.
What is the source information used by PIA to generate a process diagram on a simple request, like the order to cash. Like, where's Pia getting the information to actually create that? So we are leveraging an Azure specific version of OpenAI. So, however, we have that version fairly walled off, right? Which means you can't, for example, go into Pia and type into Pia and say, create me a poem about process. It won't understand that prompt. Where typically generative AI and OpenAI would understand that prompt. So we're leveraging that as a base. Where we haven't gotten to is that we're not using any customer data right now to train Pia, right? So no customer information is being used outside of the context. When you're actually in the preview mode, Pia may use information in your repository, for example, to formulate a response. But we're not actually using that to train Pia. And we have some interesting ideas for ways that we can enhance Pia's capability, for example, to understand APQC framework. So that gets into a little bit of the LLM training and or fine tuning. That is certainly something that we're looking at, but on the initial release, we have not extended it. So right now, it's using a walled off version of Azure OpenAI.
Okay. Does Pia recognize call activities from bigger processes?
Yes. From a document ingestion standpoint, even from kind of the prompt, it would. Again, though, if that call activity is something that exists, for example, Pia doesn't know that exists within the repository yet. That would be part of kind of that enterprise architecture connection that we spoke about earlier.
Can these diagrams, after further refinement, be used to build discrete event and or Monte Carlo simulation models?
Yes. Yeah, the same way that you can leverage, a diagram and the associated business architecture to do that in iGraphics today.
And here's one. What license is required to create a diagram using Pia?
Well, currently right now, somebody that has an architect, designer, or collaborator license can leverage Pia. We are thinking about different ways to apply commercialization to Pia today. As we mentioned, kind of earlier in the presentation, Pia is available right now for the conversational interface. And if you are interested in the ability to upload documents, speak to your account representative. But I do want to say, kind of high level there, one of the main drivers of this technology and some of the problems that we're trying to solve is really around democratizing process, getting more people to contribute to process landscape. So, we certainly recognize, for example, if you are a new customer, you have two architects, they can quickly become the bottleneck for content creation. So our goal with Pia is to broaden the capabilities of users to contribute to the process landscape, not reduce it.
You mentioned that Pia handles complex documents. Does that mean it can handle decisions in the document?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see another one here that I'd like to address. What will the permissions look like for Pia? Will it be able to be controlled like QuickMap can? Yes.
Can iGraphics Pia generate value stream maps to benefit from the application of lean PI tools?
Yeah, I would say not yet. That is something that we're thinking about and working on. You can draw a value stream map, but it is going to utilize basically BPMN, kind of shapes and standards. It's not going to leverage kind of these specific shape activity palettes that you would find in VSM yet.
When creating the diagram, can you instruct PIA to leverage a diagram template or retrofit the diagram into a given diagram template?
Not yet. Yeah, that gets into, kind of higher level templating capability that is on the roadmap. However, needs to be there to actually support that. So, PIA can only leverage the technology that's available in generative AI today, and then the technology that's available in iGraphics. And we have some enhancements and improvements that we need to make from our templating capability. But that is absolutely on the roadmap, right? Which is this idea that I'm generating PIA and it's giving me a diagram, and maybe even it's connecting to the business architecture, but it's using the template that we use for diagrams. It is not doing that today.
So if you have APQC framework in iGraphics already, and then upload an updated version of the APQC framework, would it automatically update the framework and all interconnected processes and activities?
Yeah, not today. Today is really that initial diagram creation. Next step is the business architecture creation on that import. And then we're looking at, kind of the templating question, because templates and frameworks are similar, right? Because it's a structured set of rules that you're using to apply to the initial diagram creation and connecting to that business architecture. So, it's from our standpoint, if you saw the slide earlier, it's, we're one step, on a broader journey. But this one step is significant savings opportunities for bringing content in. So we will be looking to do that. We will be looking at ways in which I have a document. Again, I'm a process owner in your organization. I have a document that says what I do. When I upload that, adhering to and/or potentially updating APQC framework associated with that is something, that we want to do, but we don't have that capability today.
Can I connect this document to the repository modeling and or simulation? Yes.
Connect the document.
Yes. I assume that's the diagram document or.
Yeah. So today, we're leveraging that document to inform the creation of the diagram itself. What we're not doing today is simply storing and versioning that document as a particular source, but we're looking at that, right? Because most of our customers, for example, I want to upload the document and I want to create that diagram, but I want to create a relationship between that diagram that was created and the document that was used as the original source. We're not doing that today, but that is, an associated business problem that we're looking at solving with PIA.
Can PIA read a picture of a process in a document and convert it into iGraphics BPMN diagram?
Yeah, again, that's not today. That is a file format that we're looking at supporting in the future. Again, when you think about it, we have document PDF today, but OpenAI, as I mentioned before, supports about 30 different formats. Example, text. We do not support .txt today because most of our customers, for example, don't have documents stored in plain text like that. However, system-to-system integration certainly follows that logic. And so we are looking at enabling more file formats, image being one of those. And then, as we discussed before, video, audio, a mix of video and audio. I love the questions. It's telling me we're thinking about this right and we're on the right track.
And Pia learn to use the naming as we do that in the organization. For example, an activity has always one verb in the naming in our diagrams, not just nouns.
Um, Not yet, right? So again, that relies because iGraphics does not have that capability today, right? And so we are looking at, interestingly enough, leveraging object constraint language, right, to be able to bring to Process 360 Live the capability to have mandatory attributes and rules associated with diagram and object creation. Your example would be, potentially all objects must have a summary purpose instructions. All objects must have, the RACI, associated, for example, or the object can't be created, right? And so the interesting thing is we were looking at extending, OCL later this year, but then what happened is generative AI technology matured. The challenge with OCL technology is that it's an object constraint language. So customers would have to understand it in order to create the associated nuanced rules that they want. Generative AI, much like IQL or SQL or any other language, for example, has the capability to take common language, translate that to OCL for rule creation. So we don't have that today, but that is something that we're looking at on the roadmap.
How is documentation uploaded to PIA protected?
Documentation uploaded to PIA protected. So I think that there's a two-part answer there. One is if you have a protected document, a password protected document, PIA can't recognize it. So PIA can't take a password protected Word document and make sense of it. How is the data itself protected? So you're associating the document to tell PIA basically what the document's purpose is informing PIA basically the rules, the metadata, and information it needs to create the diagram. So effectively, that information is leveraged through Azure Open AI. It's only relevant for the session in which you're creating it then. The moment that you either save it, hit done, or you hit discard, that prompt resets, that token resets. That information's not stored. So it's only stored if you choose done and you save that diagram.
Okay, and how does PIA streamline a process? What does it look at to reduce steps or be most efficient?
Well, we'll talk about PIA. We'll talk about, generative AI and the roadmap in the future. So how does PIA streamline a process? Well, it streamlines the initial creation of it now. But down the road, leveraging PIA and leveraging predictive analytics along operational intelligence, for example, in metrics. So we're going to get a little complicated here. Let's say, for example, that you have 5 different systems of record in your organization that all in some way contribute to the process landscape, updating of metadata, risk information, for example. These integrations rely on APIs. And so what our vision is we want to be able to bring in real-time data to the diagram view leveraging metrics. Like right now, you can go in and you can actually see these metrics, but it's all manual. Where we really see the future is using a combination of integrations, using a combination of potentially mining data, always keeping the actual performance of the process near time updated in iGraphics. And so you'd be able to actually go to the diagram view, leveraging the metrics, and see visually heat map indicators or where there might be bottlenecks, where there might be challenges that you want to take a deeper analysis and look at. In conjunction with that, let's say that you identify a challenge or a bottleneck within your process. You might want to then simulate a what-if analysis of resolving that particular problem or bottleneck. And an example I like there is maybe you have a process that relies on 4 people, kind of doing work, and you see that there's a bottleneck there. Then you perform a what if analysis and say, okay, what if we add some more resources to this set of activities? Does it remove the bottleneck? And you might learn it does, but it creates another one downstream. So the goal here is to bring in near real-time data to your actual process itself so you can monitor.
How does PIA handle AI hallucinations when verifying and validating the PIA response?
That's a complex question. We minimize that by really walling it off. The same way that you can't go in and create a poem in PIA, where you can in general OpenAI AI. PIA is currently fairly narrowly defined in the tasks that we allow it to complete. So the hallucination is down because it's very much performing a specific task. It's not using larger data sets. It's not using larger context, which minimizes hallucinations. Now, that said, you can go into PIA and you can say, hey, create me an order to cash process. And you can tell PIA to do that 50 times. And you might get some small variance in the actual diagram of the process that it creates. But we don't consider that a hallucination.
Does PIA work with domain-specific retrieval augmented generation drag ingestion into a large language model?
Okay, somebody on the call is extraordinarily technical. The answer is I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that. I would want my engineering team to answer that. Certainly, we're using an LLM, right? And so we do have a model that is being leveraged, and that gets into kind of the interesting discussion on functionally what's happening is PIA is using the OpenAI through Azure model, and it's taking whatever context. If your context is create a process, an order to cash process, it's going to leverage that model to inform the creation of that process. If you provide a document, for example, it's not only going to leverage the model for that, but it's also going to leverage the context in the document for that as well. But Don, let's catalog that one. Let's get an answer to that question. I simply don't know the technical underlying in the actual, there's frameworks that are leveraged for generative AI technology, and we've worked within a couple of them, along with some additional partnerships that we have. But I would be happy to follow up with a more technical how PIA is implemented, answer.
I just enjoyed asking that question.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Can PIA pull in activity owner or subject matter expert information from the organization for each activity in the process?
Yeah, it will be able to. It can't. That's part of that creating the enterprise architecture, mapping to existing relationships, proposing new object creation. So that goes across all of the different enterprise object types that we have. That goes across resources, processes, strategies, opportunities, risk controls, all of that. But PIA first needs to be able to actually create or find an associated enterprise architecture. And that is next on the roadmap, but not existing capability.
While using PIA, is the repository data at any point at risk of being collected, stored, hosted, or processed outside of the customer's cloud environment?
No. Short answer. That's one of the reasons that we're using Azure-specific OpenAI, right? Because we're already leveraging Azure to provide our cloud services, right? So this, OpenAI Azure version is simply part of that technical ecosystem. So it's the same data processor. And we're not today, for example, using the customer's specific repository information to inform PIA. We will need to do that, right? We will need to do that when it gets to object creation and mapping, right? So if we want to connect a resource to a lane, for example, we have to be able to know that it exists. But again, this is happening within the context of actually prompting PIA. You get into the preview window for PIA, that's where this creation's happening. That is where these connections are occurring. When you hit done, you've created the relationships, you've proposed the objects. If you hit discard, all that information's gone. The next time you prompt PIA, it's going to go through the same process again. So you think about it as iterative, not retaining that long-term memory of what's happened.
Great. Hey, we're at the top of the hour. Ira, I want to thank you very much. And I want to thank all the participants with the host of questions that we have here. But I do want to remind everybody that if you have some follow-up questions or want a conversation, both Ira's email is on the screen right now, as well as info@igraphics.com. Thank you, everybody.